call the July 17th meeting to order and remind us all that these meetings are being taped. And if you do not want your picture to be taped, you should cover it up. Don't show us your picture if you don't want us to see it. The meetings are being taped. Jeff, are you there?
Sorry, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Our first item.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so for everyone, you just met Jeff Shapiro, the secretary of the Electoral Board, and there he is. And the vice chairman, Kevin Pigney, and I'm the chairman, Kate Hanley. And Jeff, it's a great picture. Blue's great on you.
There we go. Good.
We need to, and I have some procedural motions that we need to make, because every year we need to readopt the policy for remote participation of members and the policy for all virtual public meetings. And since we are doing remote today, we will just do this right now. So I would move that pursuant to section 2.2-3708.2 of the Code of Virginia, the Electoral Board readopt its policy for the remote participation of members and its policy for all virtual public meetings. I would say to the motion that there's no change in them. We just need to do it every year.
I definitely second that motion.
Can you do that remotely?
I think that's self-interest at its very best. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries and we move on. The next item is the adoption of the agenda. I got them all reversed. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt the agenda.
I'll second it, I'll second it, sure.
I think there's no discussion on the agenda. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. The minutes of June 4 and June 18. Mr. Secretary, is there a motion?
Motion for what?
The minutes.
Oh, yes, I'll move that we adopt the minutes.
So you're moving to adopt the minutes of June 4 and June something else. 18th.
Yes, I move to adopt both sets of minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. The next item is the adoption of election officers. You have before you a sheet of election officers, 63 Democrats, 14 Republicans, and 38 unaffiliated for a total of 115. Is there a motion to adopt the appointments list?
I'll move to adopt them.
Okay, we've heard a motion. Is there a second?
I will second.
Discussion.
In the future, are these being distributed in advance of the meeting? The lists of election officer appointment
distributed to
in a board pack in advance of this meeting. I think the first time I'm seeing this is right now, but you may have seen it. I just missed it.
I generally don't send those electronically. You get a hard copy.
Yeah, I wonder if you might send it maybe a week in advance so that we can review it beforehand, see if we have concerns on specific individuals.
So it depends on whether the political party representatives approve the officers. Typically, I'm able to prepare the list about 2 days before board meeting. And I do send a copy of that to the designated representatives from each local party committee.
And that's done 2 days in advance?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Then that's status quo is fine.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. We are now to the general register. Oh, no, we're not, because I see the commissioner visiting us today, Thomas Hicks, from U.S. Election Assistance Commission. And thank you for being here. He came to present awards that the office has won from the EAC. And so thank you for being here and thank you for joining us. He is, by the way, a Fairfax County resident and voter. So this is the public coming to see us. Do you have anything you'd like to say to us?
Thank you for all the work that you do, and congratulations to Fairfax County for winning 2 awards and getting 3 honorable mentions for our Clearinghouse Awards, which are, folks who don't know, recognized from other election officials from around the country. So
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, let's give a round of awards to a round of applause to our staff. Let's give a round of applause. They are terrific awards. Now, moving on to the general registrar's report. Mr. Spicer, our general registrar.
Thank you. So we start with the numbers in the first page. Slightly going up, increase of 1,711 voters. We're up to 804,000 total, 762,000 active. And then you see how we got to that. The subtractions, about 1,870 subtractions. That's for June. That's about what we've been running for the past 6 months, very close to the less. And the largest number you'll see is 1,311 of those are individuals that transferred to another jurisdiction in Virginia. As usual, we have the deceased and the other categories. And then the next page, also how we got to the number, is the number of additions in June was 3,820. And that's new voters and transfers in from another jurisdiction. And other records that are being stated as different things. And then finally, on the numbers, we have voter registration transactions, which again is not an addition or subtraction. If somebody changed their address or made some other kind of change. And so that was, you can see the largest number by far is transactions at the DMV. If there are any questions about the numbers? No. Next on the third page, the Department of Elections in Richmond is required to do 1 confirmation mailing each year, but the last couple of years, 2. So they just did a confirmation mailing on June 25th. They sent that to almost 21,000 individuals, Fairfax County, 4,955 who moved within Fairfax County and 16,013 who moved out of Fairfax County. And again, that comes from when we get returned onto the mail as the primary source. And we compile that throughout the year. And that's collected on the voter registration system. You can see we haven't had very long, but as of July 14th, we already have 4,400 responses from that. Individuals that, which is terrific because when they respond, that gives us an opportunity to update their voter registration status. So you see the categories. We had 2,820, that's the largest number. They were undeliverable. And then polling place changes. On July 3rd, the Attorney General issued a certificate of no objection to the following polling place changes. We're splitting Huntington Precinct to create Montebello Precinct with its polling place at Montebello Community Center. Reallocating the polling place for Virginia Hills from the Virginia Hills Center to the Franconia Recreation Center. Adjusting the precinct boundaries to relocate 1,107 voters from Marshall to Shreve Precinct. And finally, changing the name of the polling place for the Green Spring Precinct from the Green Spring Conference Center to the Hunters Crossing Conference Center.
I think we should be clear, the name of the precinct doesn't change, it's the name of the location. So all of you working with Green Spring Precinct will continue to work with Green Spring Precinct. Its address is different.
Now, we had to hold the debate, some
Yes.
realignment.
Yes, because of the election in the 10th district coming up on the 9th of September, and there wasn't enough time to get all the approvals done and be sure that we got the clearance from the AG's office in time to print stuff. All the board did not consider or approve the Board of Supervisors. The changes that were to happen in the 11th district. They suggested, and I think we agree, there are others to do, and so after the first of the year, we'll probably have another big packet.
How quickly did the Attorney General turn around the request on these polling place changes? Is that a month-long process? Is that a 24-hour thing? How long typically, or in this case, did it take?
They're allowed 60 days statutorily. The public hearing was on June 24th.
This was
and we got back the approval on July 3rd. So very, very
Exceptional.
fast turnaround.
But that was a public hearing at the Board of Supervisors.
Yes.
Correct.
And so then it would have gone to the Attorney General's office within a day or two.
Right. It
So
went within about 3 days.
And so the AG turned it around.
very quick.
That was quick. That was my sense. That's even further.
We haven't had, it hasn't always been like that.
Then we get into, it's not a typical summer for us. We're not gonna have a break between elections at this point. So, there's gonna be a special election on September 9th, not included in the report because it wasn't our event. The nominating though, I don't know if you want to say anything, there's about, what, 50,000 voters?
Yes, both parties together had about over 40,000 voters in their nominating processes, their unassembled caucuses. Love that. And that's pretty exceptional. It's unusual to have caucuses that big in a vote in an 11 in a district. I suppose if you had a statewide. Congratulations to both parties for doing it, getting it done, and getting people involved.
So we're getting ready for what we expect could be a very large turnout special election, but was much larger than a primary election and closer to a general election. And so we're very consistent. It's in 2/3 of the county roughly. So we're going to have the 2 45-day satellite locations that are in the 11th district. That's Government Center and North County Center will be open for 45 days, which is our standard. And then we'll have 9 locations that will be open August 20th.
While you're doing that, do you all have the handouts and the cards that have gone out? The copies have been printed on. The sheets. Yes, on the sheets. Why don't we go? Yeah, go get the sheets.
But we do not have the palm cards ready yet. They're at the.
But the sheets are ready, and where the sheet, the map of where the satellites are is ready also.
Because it'll also have the time that both the locations are open.
And we also don't have it in the report. We also have the ballot, just in case you don't know the ballot for this election. We don't have an independent candidate. We have a Republican representative and Democratic representative, but in the possibility for write-ins. We can get samples of that.
It's a short ballot. It won't take as long as it has in the past.
And then election officer assignments for the satellite locations are going very well. And we'll have our typical that the chief at every location will represent the Republican Party and the assistant chief will represent the Democratic Party. And we're going to get to the resource allocation a little bit later in the meeting for satellites and also for election day. So we just talked a little bit about that here. We're gearing up. We want to be prepared just in case it is a high turnout election. So we're going to have between a minimum of 40% ballots that would be sufficient for 40% of the registered voters, up to 60% are at our more active locations. And we could always print more. And that takes us to page 5. Absentee mail requests, again for this election, even though it's only 2/3 of the county, then we've got 51,199 absentee ballot applications for the special application. Many of those are permanent, ongoing, that's 46,030. And then 4,972 from overseas and military voters. I will show a breakdown of just what we got in June for this election.
Wait a minute, I'm understanding. We've already gotten 460 absentee ballot requests in June for the September 9th election. Is that what this chart says?
Yes,
Wow.
yes. This is not like a primary, this is
No,
certainly
this is.
high volume. And so we're gearing up for we're treating this, again, the numbers we have to be ready for what we very much expect will be far more than a primary election. So we're going to have about 8 election officers per precinct, total of 1,450 election officers for 175 precincts. As I said, that's about 2/3 of District 11, Congressional District 11 is about 2/3 of the county. So we're preparing for that. We're training, and even if we didn't have this election, this is our every 2 years, we train everybody. So today we've already trained over 2,000 election officers for the 2025 to 2026 period, which is outstanding. And on page 6, tomorrow we will begin our logic and accuracy testing. We provided notification to both political party chairs. And it will start at the Morissette Operations Center. Every piece of equipment that will be used in this, same procedures that we do for every single election. We will thoroughly test every machine, and the procedure open to the political parties, of course, is required by state law.
So the ballot marking devices that we're going to use for the special election are the ones that we're historically using.
They're the new one. They're the same as we used in June, the PS300, the upgraded machines.
Can you?
No, I'm saying the ballot marking.
GBA compliance,
Speak into
express.
the mic. Jeff can't hear you.
Yeah, I couldn't hear Kevin, but I can hear, I mean, I can hear the registrar when he's talking.
So the question is, we have a whole bunch of new equipment that we've accepted that we are holding in abeyance the rollout of until next year. And I'm probing to see, because it's not clarified on the document, which equipment we're using, the new equipment or the old equipment. I think the answer is the old equipment, but I wanted to understand.
I'm sorry, that was gonna, I'm getting that later in the report. That's where we were at because we didn't know if we'd have enough time. The report later in the report, we are using.
The new ballot marking equipment.
Yes,
Okay.
every piece of new equipment.
Great.
And I'll get to that very quickly. Let's see, page 7. Legislation, just a couple of bills. One is reducing, this is no small thing, the period in which the books are closed for future elections, not including special elections, will go from 21 days to 10 days, which will have, for jurisdiction of our size, very significant impact, not the least of which is we print an emergency poll book, which is just over 60,000 pages. Usually we have from the point that the books close, so we have a good, good period of time. Now the books won't close until 10 days before the election, so that's much compressed. So what we're doing, we've got the county's high-speed printer that we're going to be able to use. We usually contract this out. So we're working with county staff and for future elections, exploring also as a cost savings measure to get our own high-speed printer because we'll save a great deal over time. The next,
Let me stop there and say the reason this occurred in the General Assembly is I don't think the theory was behind the people that advocated for it, and many of the smaller jurisdictions did, I would dare to say most, that by making the registration close later, you would have fewer provisions. I'm skeptical because I think people learn when the last day to register is and then they don't, no matter what. And those people that show up at the polls with provisionals knew they could go and vote same day registration and do that. But that's the theory behind it. It'll be interesting to see if that's what happens. And of course, that will be in effect, I guess, for the special. Because it's going to affect July 1st.
but it won't be for the special. The books will close the same. It doesn't affect special elections. So even though it's effective July 1st, but not for special elections.
Also, they forgot that primary. It's already pretty short for special.
And the other piece of legislation, significant for us, it requires all localities to report provisional ballots cast by precinct. Not been a requirement. The results.
How are we gonna do that?
Very carefully.
I mean, will we do it on election night?
No, this is after you've adjudicated. So when I say provisional
Or I mean,
cast,
at the end of, I'm sorry, at the end of the canvas.
yes.
So
Well, not at the end of the canvas, at the end of what you did the Sunday after the
at
election.
the end of the whole thing, I call that whole thing sort of the canvas. At the end of the whole thing, then we will, when we finish, we will have to add those to all the precinct totals then before we certify?
Right, well, we'll do it electronically,
Yes.
it'll just be added in,
Will it be a separate column?
right? Yes.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
already gathering that data in that database.
Right, we have the data.
The data, we're already tracking this data. The only issue here is now we're being asked to report to elect.
Well, the part is we have to add it in sooner. I mean, they might,
No, it's just that now we don't report results by precinct
That's
because provisionals are a precinct. The idea being that you can't identify how someone voted if there's only one provisional cast or 2 provisionals, whatever, in the precinct. But then the law changed that now we have to report results by precinct, and they'll be in a separate column when you're looking at, post-election day, early voting, absentee.
And
And
then there'll be
because now we
provision.
report turnout by precinct, but votes are all in the provisional precinct. So now they'll be separated out. And we won't have a provisional precinct anymore.
So I think so I had understood we had an absentee precinct.
As absentee, this is provisional.
Right. I hadn't understood that we had a separate provisional precinct. I had understood when we processed all of the provisional ballots that we knew what precinct they were from because
Well, we
they
knew,
came in from the
right,
precinct.
we know,
But they
Okay.
were,
but they're not, the results weren't reported by precinct, but the turnout was.
But ultimately, is there any change required for the database to track this data? Or does the database already have the functionality to track this data?
If I might jump in. So it's the tabulators, the high-speed scanners. Cord and his team have to make some changes in how they're configured. But once the ballots are scanned through the machines, it will then produce the report that displays the vote totals by precinct to me with this. So the significant procedural changes for us, one will be for Cord and his team to do in advance of the election. And the other one will be for when we do the provisional hand count that you as the board do. That instead of being able to do all the ballots together and aggregating the total votes from all those ballots together, we'll have to separate them by precinct again. So this past election, I think we had something like 40 ballots to 40 provisional ballots that had to be hand counted. And we could put all 40 of those together and you could do the hand count of all 40 of them together. Now we'll have to separate them by precinct. For those 40, very few of them were in the same precinct. So we'll have to do more detailed, you all want to do more detailed
When
reporting.
we reviewed 800, well, I thought it was 400 or 800. I'm not sure what the 40 means, but
There were about 800 total provisionals, the vast majority of which were scanned through the high-speed scanner. And so those, there's no additional work required other than some configuration work up front that'll be taken care of, and then it will automatically produce the correct report. The small number that have to be hand counted, it'll be a little bit more work for the board to do. You'll have to handle those separately from the precinct in which they came.
but my question is, we had the nice reports, the spreadsheets that you had. And we,
So Cheryl and her team prepare those.
okay, we had those nice spreadsheets. So are we just add a column to that spreadsheet with the precinct?
No, you'll do the same things. It doesn't matter to you what precinct
It
they're
doesn't
in.
matter to me at all.
Right, no, it's just the way we report results.
Okay,
when you look on the computer and it's all those lines, there'll be another column that says provisionals. And there'll be 3 for Joe and 4 for Sam and
Yeah.
gotta be some women
Right.
running here, 6 for Kate.
so I like the way that, yes, 10 for Kate. What I'm trying to assess is this a light lift or a heavy lift? It sounds like it's a light lift, with all respect to Court. Right, so this is data that we already have. This is going to be
Yeah,
normal course. This is not a big deal.
for our team, it's not a very heavy lift. There's a little bit more work when we have to input the hand count, because we have to go precinct by precinct. So it'll make the provisional night a little bit longer, but that's about it.
The more precincts you have, and remember, we now have 264, 5, 6, some of those, the more you have to go through to assign them to. So this isn't, and there was no stopping this train. So the General Assembly did it, and here we are. If you only have 6 precincts, and we know a lot of people that do, it doesn't take very long. Go ahead.
Next category, office personnel. We're currently recruiting for the election officer manager position, which was Gretchen Coleman. This position closed on Friday, July 11th. So that's something we're working on. And very importantly, we didn't put in the report, but I've informed the electoral board members now, I'd like to publicly inform that Cheryl became my deputy general registrar, over 3 years ago.
Something like that.
Fantastic job. She was doing so well that I got authorization for the first time in the office's history a couple years ago to have a deputy director, and she has done great at that. So 2 for 1, deputy general registrar and deputy director. Over the past year, I got authorization working with workforce planning to get a second deputy general registrar and deputy director. And as of June 28th, Robbie Udeshi is no longer the election manager. That position will remain vacant, so it's not a net increase in. But please congratulate Robbie is now the second deputy general registrar and deputy director, specifically for election administration.
Applause.
I just think it's a tie.
And just to give you a mental picture of the office, which has transformed drastically over the last 3 years, the leadership, I do my small part, but it's really the team. So what we have now is what I call 3 senior leaders, 3 senior leadership positions. Cheryl, you've been doing it great for 2 years. Now you have a partner, as Deputy General Registrar and Deputy Director, Ravi, and then the other senior leader is this guy back here, Cord Whitehouse, doing fantastic. He's IT, but he's so much more. And what's great is, unlike ever before in this office, there's so many people working together at all levels, and that's what makes it work. So great job. And then we've got the FOIAs. They're starting to pick up a little steam. We received 11 FOIA requests and 4 NPRA requests since the June 4th meeting. So it takes our total numbers to 30 and 15, picking up steam there. And electronic poll book replacement project, if you recall, we put that on hold just a little bit, which is terrific because now at no additional cost, we're getting the upgraded electronic poll books. They won't be used in the special election, but they will be used in the November general election. And then to your point, Kevin, the voting equipment project, at the last board meeting, we knew that the State Department of Elections, they weren't at the earliest, they were going to approve the new EV, the ADA ballot marking devices on July 1st. So how could it be humanly possible when we have absentee voting starting on July 25th to get those thoroughly tested and prepared? But when you got a team like this, we just move forward and they're finished, they're upgraded, they're thoroughly tested. We opened that up for the political parties, which was not a requirement, but we just wanted to have an open process. Bobby, would you like to say anything about that?
Sure. So for that process on July 1st, as Eric said, is when the state approved the electionware EBS 6500 system, which included the Expresso 3 as a component. On July 2nd, we received delivery of our 650 new Expresso 3 ballot marking devices. And over the past 2 weeks, we've completed thorough acceptance testing of those devices. We've also upgraded the firmware on all of our existing DS300 ballot scanners because you have to upgrade the firmware to be compatible between both of them. Cord and his team have done yeoman's work in upgrading the electionware server, recreating the ballot, all the work associated in configuring the election. And the voting equipment team did a great job of helping with all the acceptance testing and voting and the equipment upgrades.
I got it backwards. That's fantastic. We can't say enough about what Cord, you and your team, you say just a few words about what your team did because it was such a compressed timeline. This was no small feat to change.
I'll step up someone. And I'm picked up better. So
A lot of nights and weekends and really heavy lifting.
thank you, Eric. I appreciate the recognition for my team. They did do quite a bit of work. When Electionware, which is the system that we use from ES&S, when it gets upgraded, you have to input all of your information again. Some of it can transfer through a certain process, but specifically for us, we have 4 languages. All the languages need to be input again. There's sometimes new phrases because the new equipment might phrase something differently or might have a new screen. So all of that needs to be retranslated. So between my team, specifically George and Matt, and then the language specialists on Bushra's team that did an amazing job, we retranslated thousands of translations altogether between the 4 languages. We got them loaded onto the equipment. We had the language specialist test the equipment to make sure that it sounds right when it's speaking it to you, it looks right on the screen. And like Eric said, it was a very tight timeline and it had me very nervous, but we made it work.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you.
That is great.
And again, it's working together, which is not always the case in very many jurisdictions, but it certainly is here now. Fantastic job for you and your team, Robbie. And that's why we have such a great operation. This is our leadership. So then the next page, our final thing is, as we do each month, we have referrals. There were only 22 individuals that were identified by the Department of Elections as possibly being non-citizens, but then one of those individuals re-registered and affirmed their citizenship. The other one didn't re-register in time, but did affirm their citizenship. So we referred 20 individuals to the Commonwealth's attorney and to the Attorney General.
Is that it?
Yep, that's it.
If I might on that. last one.
Questions?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I understand that using public sources, it is possible to match up non-citizens with some sense of voting history and using public open source resources to determine that non-citizens have voted. No, not this group, but I understand that using open source information, you can make those determinations. We know from elect, right? If you pull up a voter's record and it says non-citizen, is it true that you, the Office of Election Staff, can tell whether someone voted or not in a particular election because they checked in, right? They check in at the polling place.
Yes, we can look at any voters, the individuals voting.
Okay. I know this has been an ongoing conversation of which I have not been a part. Do we have something in writing from the county attorney with respect to the reporting or the referral of non-citizen actual voters to the Commonwealth Attorney?
We have met with the county attorney's office on this subject a number of times, and we don't have authorization to refer, to give information about a voter's voting.
Okay, has the county attorney committed that view to writing? Do we have something from them in
If we
writing?
have it in writing,
Yeah, we can go look and
we can
see.
make
All
sure.
right, I'd love to get a copy of that.
Anything else?
That's it.
Can I clarify that, Kevin? My understanding is, you asked about the county attorney. Marty is, I don't think the county attorney you're referring to. You're talking about the Fairfax County, prosecutor, right? Or
Whoever in the
Commonwealth
past,
attorney.
yeah, I intend to refer to whomever in the past provided legal advice to the board and to the registrar with respect to the making of referrals.
Yeah, so let me just clarify that. My understanding is that, and I haven't double checked this in a while, but that Arlington County and Loudoun County are sending the names to their Commonwealth attorney, but only those who have actually voted. And they're actually calculating who is it that actually voted as a non-citizen. In our case, Marty Desjardins gave us advice. I'm not sure if it was reduced to writing. It was his opinion that we couldn't release that information. I don't want to go further into that. Well, we don't really, I don't know if we actually have a privilege, but basically the only thing I've ever seen is a court case that seems to suggest that, but it's not really in point, and some guidance. I think it's a questionable legal position, but it's also more conservative in terms of not revealing information. So I agreed that we would send all the names, whether or not they had voted, because it was sort of less disclosure. I'd be happy to figure out if we can revisit, if you want to revisit that legally. Is that correct? If there's a way for us to get an opinion. I don't know. We don't really have our own lawyer per se as a board.
Yeah, so I'm pulling the string to do the due diligence on this, so I kind of want to understand the state of the conversation and what's been said. I've certainly heard about Arlington County and their
Okay.
practice.
Well, what I would recommend is that we go into
great.
closed session at some point with Marty, if you want to walk through his opinion. As I said, I wasn't persuaded, but I also didn't object to the way we're doing it.
I think that's a good suggestion to go ask Marty. Do we have a second?
August.
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 Because there is another question is the issue, did they vote or are they registered? And that's two different issues, which I suppose, want to discuss as well. So I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, from our perspective, we're not supposed to have non-citizens registered. As everyone knows, we have almost no way to prevent them from registering or detecting that. The only reason these people are detected is because they raise their hand and say, "Oh, you know what? I registered, but I'm not a citizen." They admit it, and then sometimes they don't. They take it back, but we don't. And this is, I think, above our pay grade. The EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, the federal body, created that form, and created a sort of penalty of perjury self uh, verification without checking documents or otherwise. And a lot of non-citizens get on our voting roll. Every month, we have to eject them when, dozens of people who have admitted to it. And we have no way of preventing them from getting on our roll. We have no way of detecting how many non-citizens are actually on our voting roll. So the system is abysmal. But given the hand that we are dealt, the only thing we can do is when people admit they're non-citizens is go through the process under Virginia law for taking them off the roll. And then because arguably there's a crime both being on the roll and voting, if you voted, we refer them to the Commonwealth's attorney who can do what they want and can investigate. Obviously, to date, they've done nothing, but that's not our bailiwick.
Could I clarify?
Let me
Because
remind
we don't
you,
have the non-citizens, they may very well have made mistakes, we see a lot of that.
that's two things. As
What was that, Eric? I didn't hear that.
We've seen a lot of people, they make a mistake, the form is very poorly designed. We're trying to give this DMV, but we don't have something saying they are definitively a non-citizen, that's their.
As the board will recall, we had that discussion with the DMV situation where people, you're not saying you're not a citizen, you're not saying anything on the DMV form. And we remember that causes you to be classified as a non-citizen. You have to, on the DMV form, affirmatively say you're a citizen. If you say nothing, if you don't see the box, and we've all looked at where that box is on the form under the clipboard or wherever it is, the people, if they don't fill it out, they're determined to be non-citizens. And we try to pursue that, as I recall, with that. The other thing is, I just wanted to remind you, Jeff, that we don't just send it to the board voted to not only send it to the Commonwealth's attorney, but to the Attorney General's office.
Right, and neither, as far as we know, nothing's been done. And also, I think we all agree the way the form is set up is horrible and potentially error prone. But if there was a check on citizenship, those errors would be caught. They are not caught. We don't know what percentage are erroneous and what percentage are intentional. We don't find the people who admit they were citizens. It's more likely to have been an error in the first place. There could be many people on the roll who are non-citizens that don't admit it, and we would never know. So it's basically an honor system at this point.
So I hadn't intended to engender a discussion, so I'm glad we've had it. My
Accidents
interest
happen.
was more narrow, which is just to get up to speed on the backstory and whether there was something in writing that I could read as advanced material. I propose that we add it to the agenda for the August
Okay, for the close,
It'll have to be a closed session agenda
meeting.
item.
Yeah, if Marty's here talking to us, I agreed.
and it's up to him if he chooses to come.
If he's here, that's right.
It's not, remember, we're not his client. Go ahead, what were you gonna
Unfinished.
say?
Yeah, we don't have our own lawyer.
Well, maybe we don't want to hear from him then. I mean, I thought that would be the next step.
That's
So we ought to hear from him.
Yes. Okay, the next step, electoral board reports. You want to start? Go ahead.
I have nothing to report.
Jeff?
I have nothing to report except surf's up.
You're gonna miss it.
Yeah.
I do have something that I want to ask because I'm quite concerned about it. I actually read the paper this morning. Did we, and there was a lot of discussion in the Post. I still am old enough to read the paper. I don't do it online. And there was a big headline in the middle of the Post this morning about, oh, I have it. The White House pushes for voter data rolls from local offices. And we haven't had that situation, I don't think, but I don't know. And I would like to ask if Virginia, they name a number of states that have had not just the White House, but all kinds of people apparently ask for information, various voter rolls, all kinds of different information. if you could come back, at your, by the next meeting and let us know if we've had the same kind of inquiries. I know that I read the, GRs list, and there have been some GRs over the state over the last 6 months or so that have reported having requests. You have to be a Virginia resident to request that kind of stuff, all the various things that are being requested. But I was just curious if we've had any of that, and if the state has had any of the same requests, and if you would ask them, we'll find out. I'd be interested. And that's all I have. Resource allocations. Next,
Sure.
we have a handout.
Yes. So would you like me to take this part?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did have one other thing. The letter that we discussed at our last meeting of our interaction with the school board about closing schools on September 9th. I think they meet tonight. I don't know if they're going to make any decisions tonight. My school board member had asked me for data. They wanted data on, because apparently she had a concern that that they don't have past data. Of course, I would posit that a general election as a congressional general election is incredibly unusual. I cannot remember when we've done that. We have specials for other things, but not a congressional. And with the interest that was shown by the parties and their unassembled caucuses, I think we can pretty much predict that this is going to be a busy year. But nonetheless, the only data, and there is some concern that on the school's part, I think, or her part, that that we now have early voting and mail voting, and so fewer people are voting in the schools, and so it's not really a problem. So I thought, well, maybe she's right, and I went to look, and I produced, because it was so cute on paper, a list of all the 109 schools that we are going to be using in the 10th district, in 11th district, that's how old I am, in the 11th district on September 6th. 68 of them will have more than 1,000, had more than 1,000 people going through their schools on election day in November. A whole bunch of others, that's a technical term, were in the 900s rather. And the provisionals of our 16,000 had not been allocated on this data yet. So I did communicate, send that to school board members. The peach are the ones on this list that had more than 1,000 people going through them, and you can see it's most of them and our big precincts. As we have expressed here, there is a certain amount of concern that we have not only in finding space, not only particularly in the number that have two, I think we have 20 of those at least that have 2 precincts in them. But the fact that that's a lot of people to be in an elementary school that cannot be locked and you can't take names of who's coming in. And so that's kind of where we are. And if anybody wants to call their school board member that thinks that it might be an issue, feel free to. That's all. I'm sorry. Yes.
Clearly, we hope the school board will take appropriate action. In the contingent that they don't,
Yeah, that's a good question.
how do we, or do we, I think as an electoral board, we may seek to engender early voting? Like public service announcements from the Office of Election.
I think we'll
They're
have
gonna be in the
to-
schools, they're gonna be crowded, go vote early, right? I mean, is that within the purview? Can we have a public
Sean?
message campaign? Because we don't want to discourage people from voting, but if they show up at a school and all the parking spaces are taken from staff and students at the high school, and they have to walk 3 blocks, that's not a workable solution.
and it is voter suppression. That my concern is as well that people, it's hard to know which end. This is August, and I think we'll have a big turnout in early voting. But I think it's gonna be bigger percentage wise for September 9th. And yes, I think that's a good idea. So
Can we ask the Office of Elections to propose to develop a plan for public communication to encourage those who are able to vote early?
We do regular
if you're
posts
taking it
through
from
OPA, you know, they
Right.
do.
But I just think WTOP, we should be hearing this beginning on day 46 before the
Right, we
election,
did one
right?
last
This
year.
is upcoming.
On the radio.
And we don't want to I mean, obviously the language needs to be careful because we don't want to dissuade people. Oh, it's going to be so crowded. I'm not going to bother to vote, right? The messaging obviously takes all of the professionals who do this for, right?
I
To
think
figure out
that-
the right messaging, but we want to engender deconflicting. And the school board may deconflict, they may not.
It's what we've done, and in the word encourage, we try not to encourage one way or the other, but to thoroughly inform, and we can just take it up another level. Provide more information, more public outreach. Here are your options. You may be very busy. That if school is going to be in session, we can just inform them. This is a situation and you have choices. You can vote at the early sites. You can vote by mail.
I don't really want to publicly message against the school board by saying the school board has decided to leave the schools open. So, right, but a neutral statement, the schools will be open. Or I'd love to say the schools will not be closed.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably not the right message. But again, we would leave to you to figure out the right language.
Yes.
Because this has the potential for really creating a lot of, well, I don't want to get to
It's-
suppression. I mean, that's, I
agree.
don't want to say that, but it will create real concern. We had one precinct that had construction nearby and people had to walk. And we got complaints about that, and rightfully so. So any messaging we can do to get out there, just really aggressively lead into it.
Hopefully they'll do the right thing before September 9th, but I agree with you. They have another chance in August, so we can.
Well, and they have their constituency, which are kids need learning. I mean,
I
they have
get
their
that.
interest as well. So I don't want to prejudge what they ought to do, but we need to deconflict to
Have an alternative.
make this available for voters with, who can't walk through blocks because all the slots around the parking are full.
I'm sorry, Robbie. I wandered
Okay.
around Lockwood's barn just as you were ready to start. Go ahead.
Sorry. Sure. So in terms of the resource allocation for any election, we first always look at comparable past elections to try to understand what we may need. In this case, look back at the last 25 years of special elections in Fairfax County. There've been a number of them, but they've almost always been for a House of Delegates seat or a state Senate district. So much smaller in scope than what we're looking at for this election. The only two that were on a large countywide level were in 2017, August of 2017, we had a special election for school board. And in February 2009, we had a special election countywide for chairman of the Board of Supervisors. In those elections, across all these special elections, the turnout, the total voter turnout hit 27%. That was the highest mark across all these special elections. So first we look at that, we have that information. However, as you noted, Kate, we have additional information this year thanks to the party nomination processes. And one party conducted voting over 2 days, the other party conducted over 4 days, and combined more than 40,000 individuals voted in those party nomination processes, which compares very similarly to what we've had turnout-wise in our primaries in the past few June elections. So it appears that this election does have high interest, high enthusiasm, and we can expect to see turnout comparable to a general election. Based on that information, we prepare a resource allocation, starting with early voting. The amount of equipment that we send out to each location, Florence and Bill always forecast and determine what the right amount might be. Fortunately, those are all resources that we have in-house, so we can always prepare plenty of those pieces of equipment. The one item that is variable and has a cost to it is the number of pieces of blank ballot paper. But blank ballot paper can be used in another election if it's not used in this election. And fortunately, we have plenty on hand already for this election. So we're projecting we may have as many as 60,000 early voters, and we have more than 100,000 pieces of blank ballot on demand paper on standby for that. If the turnout is somehow even higher than that, we'll be ready for it. But that compares with what we had in November 2022. That's the last time we had a congressional seat on the ballot that wasn't a presidential election. And in that election, we had 82,000 early voters.
22 wasn't the presidential.
Right, 2022 is the last time we had
I think it was, as we say, in Virginia,
congressional
just-
seats that was not a presidential.
It was just Congress. I don't even think there was a Senate seat on that. Was there?
Correct, so that's the last comparable election for this type of seat. It's a presidential, always the turnout is much
Yeah,
higher.
but I mean, you sometimes in the non-presidential years, you have a congressional and a Senate seat. But I think 22 was just congressional. So that's even, I don't remember, but, well, there's a senator up next year, and there was a senator up in 24, so 22 would have been no one. Yeah, it's a single election.
Which actually may compare favorably with what we're facing in the special
That's the
election.
closest.
Right. And so we had 82,000 early voters in that election, but that was countywide. This special election is in 2/3 of the county, which is why we think we may have upwards of 60,000 early voters if turnout is at the same level as it was then. And of course, you never know with the special election. But overall, that's what informs our early voting resource allocation. But we believe we have more than enough resources and ballot paper to accommodate the 11 locations that will be open for early voting. Turning to the election day resource allocation. For this one, as Eric noted, we're making sure we have the minimum number of ballots to meet 40% of voters in each precinct, and precincts that have historically had a higher turnout in past comparable elections are receiving more ballots, all the way up to 70% for the Green Spring precinct that always has very, very high turnout. But for all the other precincts, between 40 to 60% based on historical data. And of course, we have the capacity to print more ballots on demand on election day if somehow the turnout were to exceed these numbers. We don't believe we'll need to do that, but we always are ready for that just in case. Separate from the ballots, we of course are going to have 2 ballot scanners, 2 ballot marking devices, plenty of poll books at each location, and anywhere from 5 to 10 election officers to support each site. So it's close to, but not quite general election levels in terms of the other resources.
This is a special election with one office, 2 candidates. Walk me through the rationale for having more than one ballot style.
One ballot.
Style.
You have to have them approved by each precinct.
So
Is that a legal requirement that
Yes.
you have to have them by precinct?
Yes.
yeah, I can't remember which year it was, but in the last 5 years, there was a law that passed that required every precinct to have its own unique ballot style. It's the exact same ballot, but that is actually what is necessary so that we can do reporting by precinct in our final vote totals. So for example, for the mailed absentee ballots that Ben and his team will process, because there is a unique ballot style for each precinct, when they run them through the high-speed scanner, then the resulting results report will indicate how many votes for each precinct, which we're legally required to do. Before that law passed a few years ago, we would have only used, for example, in a general election, 3 ballot styles, 1 for each congressional district, but then we would not have been able to separate out the votes by precinct as we're now legally required to do. That's why-
significant.
Right. So we have a total of 179 ballot styles across the 175 precincts. The reason that there are 4 ballot styles, 4 additional ballot styles, is for our non-geographic splits. Essentially, there are 4 precincts, for which part of the precinct is in a different, requires part of a different ballot style because of its composition of districts. But those splits have no voters in them.
Precincts that have no-
Right. That's why you may see the BT numbering ending at 179 for this precinct.
So, is there any discussion on this? I don't think we need to approve it, this, we do need to approve it. Is there a motion?
I don't know that we need to approve that.
Okay,
Do you?
all right.
We can approve
Is
it.
there any objection?
Right.
Discussion? Here we go. Next. Old business. Old business?
I have a couple of things. So we had discussed the cost of early voting. And we now have very granular data from the most recent primary. Can we ask that you can give us you've already provided the budget overall. Can we see a delineation between costs associated with maintaining the voter rolls and everything that we do on a day-to-day basis with all the DMV and all of that versus the the administration of elections. So there are kind of two sides to what we do. One has to do with the voter registration maintenance and the other is the, and just divide out the budget that way, which will require an allocation between those two units of overhead. That'd be kind of step one. Is that doable? Can you do that?
If I understand correctly, all of our full-time staff, no matter if we had 1 election, 2, 5, that's a fixed cost.
Correct. I'm not talking about fixed or versus variable.
Okay,
The first division I'd like to see is voter registration functions as opposed to election administration functions. Some of our people focus on one and some focus on the other. I want to get a general sense for how that breaks down.
separate from, and then the cost of a June primary.
Well, that's secondary, right? Because
If, let me see if I understand, you're simply, you're not talking about cost by election, you're talking cost by administration, expense in the office. So the expenses that we allocate to the ballots, the machines, that kind of thing, that we have the personnel in the elections are one thing, and what the cost for the personnel and registration.
correct,
That's,
correct.
that's,
Because the office handles those two main functions.
yes.
And so that's the kind of the first step of analysis.
Yes.
And I'd like to just see that. And then once we have it broken out that way, then we can begin to consider what does it cost to support, to administer elections on a per ballot basis, right? But that's down the road. I just want to start with the first step is, let's get a handle on what the voter registration maintenance costs are as opposed to the election administration costs. And then, yeah, once we have those, I'm interested in understanding what's the, average cost of to administer the provisional ballot system or I'm sorry, the absentee ballot as opposed to in person, but let's start baby steps. We'll get with the first cut here.
Okay.
Now, when you ask election administration, are you talking about including things like ballots, everything for it, that's separate, we're not looking at that. Because of course, election officers is a huge component. I'm just not sure.
Election officers is a huge component. It drives the variable cost.
I thought we were just talking administration of it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just figure, there are two big functions of the office. Can we get a sense for how the budget is? Spread across
Let's start here and knowing the complication. Can you divide our budget into how much we spend? And I know it's going to be 90% one, 10% the other, maybe I exaggerate, but how much we spend on election, the process of elections, inclusive ballots and all of that stuff, as opposed to registration, and then include the personnel costs for each of those and those. Now it's going to be like, I hope, because voting is the important part here. Registering is a process to voting, to get to vote, but it's going to be pretty one-sided. But if you could start there, then we'll look at that on down.
And do we go with all, there's IT, I don't understand the
IT.
question, I can't answer the question.
Well,
How-
so there are indirect costs, right? And you have an indirect cost pool. So I'd like to know all the contents of the indirect cost pool. And then we can think about how we allocate it between those two functions.
Okay, so just voter registration, election administration.
Yeah, and as any costs that are associated with the operation of the office as a entity, those will all be the overhead costs, the indirect costs. We can talk about what's the appropriate allocation as between those two major functions. But I'm not, but bucket those, right? All the indirect costs, I'm sure you're tracking them already. So that I suspect you already have. I'm not sure whether you're tracking it between those two functions, and that's what I'm asking for.
How much detail is there in the published budget for the county? I haven't looked at it lately. It breaks it out by a couple of categories.
That breaks it up for is full-time
Yeah.
salaries,
Have you
non-merit.
seen- have you had an
I've
opportunity to see
studied that. The data I'm looking for is reflected there. It's aggregated across different buckets. It uses different categories. Like it'll have all salary. It doesn't break it between the two.
Right.
functions. Okay, correct.
If there are issues with difficulty getting that and figuring and getting that done with an election coming up, we'll understand. Because we don't keep it that way. And so that,
Right, I just, like, if I say, okay, how many votes, how many people voted, or how many people voted last in the general election divided by our budget, I can get a number, but that's not a fair number. Because it costs real resources to ensure that we have an accurate voter roll. And so I want to back out the costs that are associated with that function, so I can look at the costs that are associated with
That's a different.
the election. Right?
That's a different question.
Well, that's the downstream question. Let's just start at the
Okay.
top of the question.
Any other old business?
Does that need to be a motion or?
Old business? Is anybody else on? No, that's
Yeah.
not the question.
I have one other on language, because I know our new, I'm very excited that we have the new ballot marking machines, but that's not what I'm raising language with. Has there been a change in the last year on the language support available through the number when people call the Office of Elections? You know, press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, etc. Has there been a change in what we offer callers when they call?
You know what we need to do? We need to check with the census and see if they're gonna report the mid-year update on who's required to do what. We need to know that this year, if they're gonna do that. Because this is the, well, maybe it's early next year.
It'll
'Cause
be
this is-
the end of this year for next year.
Yeah. Okay, never mind. I'll worry about that. That'll be Christmas presents, everybody. Okay. Closed session. No public comments. Oh, I forgot public comments. How could I? Public comments. We all know that, and believe it or not, I time it, that everybody has 3 minutes. Sometimes we get in the middle of it and it goes longer. But these are your comments to us. And if you come up to the podium so that the people that watching from home can see it, we'd appreciate that. Is there anybody in the audience who wants, we'll start with people here. Christine.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else besides Christine? Just Christine. Okay, Christine.
Okay, these are literally just specific informational questions based on the general registrar's report today.
Okay, well, we will, as you know, if we don't have the complete answer, we'll get back to you in writing. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. Will you be sending out a sample ballot since this election, special election, is being treated as it is a federal election and you're treating it as the equivalent of a general in so many other ways?
We had not planned to, I don't think.
So you're not sending out a sample ballot, even though it is like a general, and you kept saying it's very similar to a general election.
I'm sorry, we were just referring to the turnout. We've never sent a sample ballot for a special election.
Okay, that's. And what was the last document that was sent to the entire county?
The entire county.
Would it have been the sample ballot for 24?
Well, do you mean the entire county or the entire registered voter list?
Well, the entire registered voter list. You don't send a sample ballot to the entire county.
If you're talking about our office, of course, the county sends tax mailers.
No, I mean your office. That's why I'm asking you.
Yes, that's the last item.
Okay.
September last.
And specific to that, looking at page 3, doing the math, you received 2,820 that were undeliverable. You received 1,648 that had a reason. That leaves 16,400 that are TBD. If those, now I'm assuming some have come in since the 14th, and they'll continue coming in. At some point, when will you be making ones who did not get back to you inactive? What is the process for you?
You're off sample ballots. You're talking about the misstate mail out?
I am,
Yes.
as I referred to, it's page 33.
So that's NCRA.
Hmm?
This is natural change of address that mailed by elect. This is not the sample ballot, the data came.
Yes, I understand.
So it's 30 days. So they mailed it June 25th. So June, probably sometime July 25th, they will change to inactive, the status. If they did not respond, all those undeliverable included.
And the information going to elect will come from your office because they are returned to you if they come back at all.
No, they know if it's undeliverable, So that means the votes were not updated, so the record automatically will inactivate it.
So if none came back as of these numbers, there would be 16,400 voters identified as inactive. Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that. The final thing is the change to the provisionals, which you identify on page 7, SC 1044. Will that affect in any way the list of provisional voters, names, addresses, precinct, which is given routinely to the parties as required by law? So we'll continue to get that, and that will include precinct information. Perfect. Those are my questions.
Anybody else? Anybody online, Beth? Anybody online? Do you have anything, Mr. Shapiro? Oh,
Sorry, wait a second. Megan just raised her hand.
oh, Megan raised her hand. Okay, Megan? Computer's
Hello, Megan Challenger from FCDC. Congratulations to Robbie on your promotion. My question is actually for you. Is it possible for you to provide your report regarding preparations for the special election CD11 race that you just gave in writing? And is it possible for you to potentially provide it very quickly so that perhaps we could contact our school board members?
I'm not sure I understand what the request is.
So the request that you just, or the report that you just gave verbally about the preparations of the office for the special election, for example, about 82,000, previously 82,000 early voters in November 2022 is a comparable number, so that you are using that to prepare for the election that's upcoming. Is it possible for you to provide that in writing?
Possible. So the question is,
It's on the tape, so. I
if
don't
I
know.
understand correctly, the question is, could we have that in, could we produce that in writing? I think it's an electoral board question. I think you connected it, Megan, to for the schools, the whole question about whether or not they'll close. To your point, what's the volume going to be like? We're projecting here's how much.
I think the question is, well, let me see if I
Justification for
understand
that.
what the process is here. Could you provide in writing so that both parties can have the information that you just said, and it shouldn't take long, it's a couple paragraphs about what you just said about what you related to, what you used to allocate resources. Is that the question, Megan?
That is the question, yes. Could you provide your report about your allocation of resources in writing to the parties relatively quickly? Sorry
Well,
for that.
The rest of it is, could you write it down because they meet tomorrow night? Is that the unsaid thing here?
Yes,
Good.
right. So that there could be something provided to the school board prior to their meeting.
So Megan, we have a 10-page report that's a spreadsheet that goes precinct by precinct with the
Oh.
planning. If we provided that, would that answer the mail, or are you looking for a summation of that, a narrative description, summation of the spreadsheet?
Not seeing the spreadsheet sounds like it might be sufficient. If Ravi, for example, already prepared his notes for the meeting and it exists, it might be nice to have the summation. I'm not trying to give him more work to do.
So
It's Megan, or did you
So-
know? His report is posted online.
I think if I understand the question, I think we all share a goal as election administrators to try to serve the interest of the election, that we would prefer that schools be closed. It'd be helpful, I can write up a few paragraphs summarizing what I described earlier, if that would be helpful. to the
Problem
board.
is tonight, is the third
Yeah.
one.
I'm happy to write it up immediately.
If you had bullet points.
Go on recess in August.
Bobby, I'm not being facetious. You can run this through AI and ask for a summary. It's amazingly good.
I'm happy to provide something, and whatever means very quickly, if that would be beneficial.
If that's,
Barbie, though, that's
On
not
that
it.
note,
thank you. If it is possible, it would be great, because I do think that advocacy on this point could result in possible change. I mean, who knows if it will, but I think it could.
Maria Burrell.
Hi, I'm with FCDC Precinct Ops. I want to thank you for anything you've done in the past to publicize that on election day, people have to vote in their precincts. But if you could up that a little bit, because we do such a good job of talking about all the early voting that every election day we get people going to the wrong place. And so I would ask that for both the special election and for November 4th as well.
Well, we keep working on it, but good point.
Thank you.
On that, for government center for election day, can we get posted a huge map outside so that voters don't make it into the building and out of frustration say, well, I'm here, I want to cast my ballot anyway? Because we had 15 or 20 of those, as I understand it, that ended up being voted out of precinct. If we could get them before they even enter the building.
I think,
Some people are map allergic, but others will see the map and be able to use that.
I think we have something, we have a sign similar with a QR code on it that shows you where you can go on a map and all.
We did,
of
it
that.
was this large and it was near the building,
Let's do a bigger one
proposing
for outdoors.
getting a rolling
If-
chalkboard
If
size.
we can, because the building has,
Yeah, fair.
but yes, we will.
And I don't know if that's also for the other, I don't know how many of the other satellites we actually use as precincts on election day. So
She
a
does.
comparable concern, right? A comparable, make it easy so people can see it from their car almost. I mean, obviously the parking lot doesn't pay,
Well,
but that's the concept.
we'll see what's doable, and I think that's a good. Anything else, Maria? You're still on my screen. Okay, anyone else? Beth?
No one else.
All right, here we go. We have, and I think we're gonna do it in this room. I move that the electoral board enter into closed session for discussion or consideration by local electoral boards of voting security matters made confidential pursuant to 24.2-625.1 as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-33711 parenthesis A, parenthesis 34. And so we are going to go into closed session. That means for security session. It is a security session. We will not be voting for or against security afterwards, so you don't need to wait because this is a briefing for us and we will be taking no public action on it. So unless we get through it. So you can wait around out in the hall or down you can go get coffee.
Because we're gonna host 319 as well.
Yes, it'll have to be way in the hall because we're gonna close
the way.
319 and take everybody off to put, different places. So it was nice seeing you all. I may wait and see us afterwards if you wish, but that may be a while.